I never really wrote short stories, but when I started writing what would become The Way I Used to Be, I actually started it thinking it was going to be a short story. And it just kept expanding into, um, it was more of like a personal essay that turned into a fictional short story that then just took on this entirely different life of its own and became a book length novel. So yeah, when I started writing The Way I Used to Be, it was really just for me. I was writing it kind of as a personal space to kind of just work through my own stuff surrounding the issues that the book deals with, which would be like, um, healing from trauma, sexual assaults, and all of these things that had really impacted me personally. And I found that as I continued writing about it, the story just continued to evolve into something that was not just about me or my personal experience, but something that touched on larger issues that were going on. And when I started writing this book, it didn't come out until 2016, but I started writing this book back in like 2008, 2009. So as I was working on it and the story itself was evolving, the world around us was evolving too. And we were starting to see more mainstream discussions about sexual assault, and issues like consent were starting to make their way into like mainstream dialogue. And that definitely informed the book as I was writing it too. Really freeing, flexible process writing that first book before I knew if anyone would read it, before I even had really considered whether I wanted it published or not, because I could take my time. That's definitely the book I spent the longest writing. Probably between from when I started the book to when it was published, that spanned about 7 years. And not that I was writing it that whole time. I had, other things going on, other jobs, and but it was it was a story I kind of got to live with for a really long period of time. And I think that made the writing process a lot different than my subsequent books. Next up for me is something I have been wanting to write for a very long time. It is actually the sequel to my first book, The Way I Used to Be. It's called The Way I Am Now. And this book continues the story where it left off. So I kind of had The Way I Used to Be end with a little bit of an open-ended conclusion for various reasons. It felt like if I continued writing anything, it would be an entirely different story. And I also didn't want to give that book an ending I didn't believe could really happen in real life. And so now it's been 7 years since that book came out, and with everything that has changed in the world, in regard to the Me Too movement, and so many things have progressed and other things have not progressed, in regard to sexual assault and how we deal with both survivors and perpetrators. I felt like now was finally the time to write a sequel to that first book. And it's actually told from the dual points of view of the main character, Eden, and her love interest from the first book, Josh. And it's sort of the story of this couple trying to grapple with how to move forward from trauma, and because they each have things that they're dealing with separately and together. And yeah, so this book will be coming out in fall of 2023.